since we have the three speakers coming from the US, so can you share some of your experience when you practice in the US first? Talking about the strategies or your experience of how to deal with the issue of sustainable design with your user, with your clients.
So Horace, when we think about sustainability, we actually take the word very literally. It is sustaining our ability. We think that sustainability certainly is about looking at all of the natural resources in the world, but because we have such a people focus, we think that if we can think about how we sustain ourselves through time and space, that we actually can make a difference. And then with our clients, we think that if we've designed environments and products that don't need to be changed rapidly, that actually will last much longer than their shelf life, then surely we've automatically made an impact on sustainability and our world and its resources. And so we're actually very proud because a lot of our products, we have environments, I've designed spaces that have not changed in 18 years. I was just telling someone I have a street-level store for Fidelity Investments on 6th Avenue across from Radio City Music Hall that was designed 18 years ago. And don't ask me what we did there, but it was so tailored with a response to the client, they haven't changed it, and they surely could have. And so in that instance, while we were, at the time, we reused a lot of material and used good material, it was just done in such a way that the client takes ownership and has a sense of pride. When they do that, we think it is better for all of us. That's our response, at least.
Thank you, Shashi. Joyce, what do you think?
Well, I practice in Hong Kong and in a smaller studio and a younger studio, I think, compared to Shashi. Similarly, I think we approach things from a very personal point of view. I think it's important to, I think in contrast to your Wikipedia quote where it's quite a grandeur and extremist sort of statement, starting small and focusing on the location around you and seeing what can be done, materials that can be sourced around you, and working with artisans, techniques that are readily available on projects that are here in Hong Kong. I think that in itself is a beginning to sustainability, and I think building on the relationships, whether it's with client, with vendors, with artisans, craftsmen, for them to feel part of the process. So like a key word you used, ownership, that they have, I think is important, because once you have ownership as a designer or as a business owner, you see it as more of a long-term thing, and that is the definition of sustainability. And also with timelessness in design and in style, not only is it a selection of material, it's also, I think, about the aesthetic of it, that it's not sort of a fleeting moment in time, that it can outlast and it can kind of grow with you.
Grow with you. Very good statement. So William, what do you think?
I agree with both Sashi and Joyce. We tend to look at the concept of sustainability as really as lasting. There's a lot of ways that you can take advantage of very, I'd say, new materials, new production of materials to claim something as sustainable. But we believe in just honest materials procured in a way that is good for the planet, and I think lasting design is probably the best approach for us. And short of looking into scientific research or things, I think that's sort of how we play it.
So we'll talk about Asia design. So this BODW forum usually will talk about design for Asia all the time. So from foreign perspectives, what do you think about the trend or the design phenomenon happening in Asia right now? Do you think we are doing sustainable design, enough, or what do you think we can do more with this?
I actually don't know whether sustainable design is being practiced here. I do know that there's an incredible amount of effort being put into raising design in Asia. We've been working here continually for in all of the almost 20 years that I've been in the office. We've been working in Asia, and there's just a continuous and rather remarkable trajectory of amazing design work that's going on here. And I don't think it's just about international exposure and bringing in international designers. I think there's a genuine sort of discovery of certain basic things about the culture that are now being expressed through design. It's a remarkable thing to witness, and it's a beautiful thing to take part in. And we can take advantage of that in certain ways. For us, again, it's about weaving things in that are of the locale without being expressly, signifiers of the locale. But it's a remarkable environment to work in right now.
Joyce?
I actually wanted to refer back to one of the points I made during the presentation where it said trend farm to table. And looking to the food industry as an inspiration, I think Hong Kong anyways, I think for young people, food kind of takes the lead on being sustainable. And even Sunday markets are becoming this hip thing to do where you have local farmers growing local food. And I think it shouldn't be far off. That design should take the same route. And it shouldn't be a trend. It should be the norm. And I think, Hong Kong's a small place out of the whole of China, but I think if it takes precedence, it's something that can follow on quite well as well.
Shashi?
So I don't know Hong Kong well enough, but don't know Asia very well either. But having traveled here quite a lot in the last 5 years or so, I'm always very impressed that Asia has grown, expanded, matured so rapidly and so much, and so quickly. I'm repeating myself. I think in part because you have the human resource, in part because there is a great deal of discipline and talent, in part you have a massive need to think about issues that are being addressed. And so I always, I'm always impressed. I always wonder what will happen if I come here 6 months later. What will I see that will have dramatically changed in the process within Asia? I do, though, to your point, Joyce, I see this amongst young. It's almost as if the below the Y. Millennials, thank you. The millennials have just this inborn need to think about sustainability and think about integrating life in a way that has to do with caring about the resource. So I feel awfully optimistic. I just think that things are changing dramatically, and I think that Asia is going to be teaching us in the West a lot of new stuff very soon.
Great. I would like to ask another question to another issue. Actually, it's another big issue, which is universal design. So universal design, or design for all, again, I would like to read out another description, talk about the definition of these things first. Universal design is to describe the concept of designing all products and the built environment to be aesthetic and usable to the greatest extent possible by everyone, regardless of their age, ability, or status in life. The term design for all is used to describe a design philosophy targeting the use of products, services, and systems by as many people as possible without the need for adaptation. Design for all has been highlighted in Europe by the European Commission in seeking a more user-friendly society in Europe. It's about ensuring that environments, products, services, and interfaces work for people of all ages and abilities in different situations and under various circumstances. So design for all seems like it's well developed in Europe. Not sure whether it's also the case in United States. What do you think?
I think it's idealized. I don't know that it actually exists. I wouldn't be able to say honestly that I've witnessed it in Europe, certainly not in the United States. I think there is still in design, like in much of life, there's a stratification. There is a notion of aspiration, and I think that it's a very, very difficult thing to achieve one design for all with any degree of success. I think it's essentially a kind of compromise. So I'm not sure that that's the best thing for design, to try to create a one-size-fits-all design mentality.
What do you think, Joyce?
I think I'm with William on this. I strongly pretty much disagree with what universal design literally means. I think design is good when it's specific and when it's designed specifically for someone that you know very well, that you know deeply, whether it's a group of people, a community of people, neighborhood, but it has to be specific. That's the world in itself isn't equal because of location, because of climate, and to have one design fit all, I think is not realistic. And also there's so much joy in experiencing differences between different cultures' design that I think it would be a shame if there was this one solution. But I do agree with it that everyone should be able to enjoy design, and that it shouldn't be this kind of high up prize where only money can afford. So I think no to universal design for now, but yes to the overall enjoyment.
Do you agree, Shashi?
Well, I think I have to beg to differ. And I have to beg to differ because I believe in design democracy. And maybe I interpret it a little differently to how you're interpreting it, and maybe also to how you are, Horace. Design, the accessibility for me is about allowing every human being an equal means to enjoying the built environment or designed objects. In that sense, I think it can be specific, but it also can allow for all people to share that joy or use. So I do believe in universal. I don't believe in the. See, I think one of the problems that we have, and maybe in that case I agree with you both, is that in interiors particularly, actually also in the whole sustainable side of things, we end up codifying things and making these very specific kind of interpretations that then become these straitjackets. And that's not design. But the ideas are important, and the ideas do require to be addressed, I think. I think that, so we live in the edge of trying to understand people in that soft way always. We want to understand things like, how does someone feel that they're really respected or trusted in their environment? We don't care that they think it's the most beautiful space. We suspect that if they feel really good in the environment, they will like the environment. But how do you generate those soft qualities? In that realm, we know that the future, that there's a lot of issues that are coming up now, such as ADD, or all kinds of new kinds of disorders, or we're labeling as disorders, that will equally need to be addressed in our built environment. So I don't know what the answers are to this, but I think that they're very important questions that do need to be addressed, and I think Asia, with Asia's openness to design, has an opportunity to address them in a new way, in a way that we haven't. We've got, in the States especially, we've got processes and protocols that we're now, 50 years later, rethinking. And in Asia, you have the ability to not make the mistakes we have made and need to now change.
Good statement. We have got some time for question from the floor. So anyone would like to ask any question regarding the three speakers' speeches?
Thank you very much. Actually, I like the Sashi answer is the best. Actually, Joyce, do you have any children?
I'm expecting, actually.
Yeah, that's the question,
Yes.
because
Obviously.
if you have a children, if you have a baby and you put it trolley around, if you walk around the city center in Hong Kong, you will feel the need of universal inclusive design. It is quite hard to navigate with the children. Actually, that is my comment. Actually, I have one children. I have another children is coming. So, yes, that is why I feel inclusive design is quite important in the city.
It's quite unequal.
It's important to have an inclusive design, to think of everyone, and with the kids, and you just suddenly understand why disabled person with the needs that they cannot go everywhere.
No, I completely agree with that. I think with the statement I made earlier, I think universal design can be achieved through very specific addressing of a disabled person, someone who lives in a different neighborhood. I think a disabled it's location based as well, and context. And I think universal design can be achieved through a very specific address of that specific person. It's not that one solution can fit all, which I think was kind of what the quote was implying, that there should be one design passed out to everyone, and they should be able to benefit from it equally. It's going back to food again, I suppose everyone needs different nutrition, and passing out the same meal to everyone doesn't mean that they'll enjoy it equally and benefit from it equally. It takes time to understand what that person needs and to get to know them before universally the whole of Hong Kong can benefit from design. I mean, even with neighborhoods in Hong Kong, you know, Wan Chai is so different from Mong Kok, and within these neighborhoods, you can look at it very differently and think of a completely different solution for the same problem.
Yeah, I've yet to see a building that engenders a response the way an iPhone does. I think in the built environment, it's very different from product design. You can achieve a kind of universality in expression with a product. It's much harder with a space. And I think it's a great aspiration to try to capture the widest possible audience. But what I would agree with what Joyce is saying, what moves one is not going to move another. I think to create a built environment that is appealing to a very, very wide audience is some developers' aims, and for others it's actually not the aim. But yeah, no iPhone buildings yet.
You know, Horace, I'm reminded of the birth of modernism, and Bauhausian dictates that actually was a manifesto that said quality of life for all, and you get these standardized corridors and door heights, and you know, the universal man. I don't believe in the universal man either. In fact, I don't believe that there is a universal man. I think there's an equally universal woman. But I do think that at the broadest level, we need to think about design. There's a self-expression in design, and there is a specificity to design and a design solution, but it should address people regardless of age, size, shape, caste, color, equally. I do think that's very important.
Very important statement. Do we have another question?
Hi, thank you. I'm from Perspective Magazine, and I would like to know about, well, the topic is about universal design. I think it's in two ways. The first thing is creativity, which is the product looks really nice and have soul on it. And the other thing is about the functionality, which is more practical side. I think Sashi did mention about you have many experience, you know, in US, and they develop universal products for a long, long time. So could you share something which is have a balance on both creativity and functionality. The second question I want to direct is like talking about the cultural innovation. Hong Kong is a very unique city. We have multicultural, we have Chinese culture right now. How do you see the coming 10 years from each of your designers? Could you share a little bit more? Because somehow we are in a very interesting stage, creativity, culture, arts everywhere in Hong Kong these 2 years. So can you share a little bit more about how do you see in the coming 10 years of the growth in Hong Kong? Thank you.
Well, gosh, I wouldn't know where to begin with trying to think about what happens 10 years from now, but surely culture is what we all shape. And we shape culture through our knowledge and through our ideas and our understanding and our interpretations. And so it's shaped through our awareness and our education. And the more education we have, the more sophisticated our interpretation of our culture, which perhaps espouses progress. Innovation is connected to that, but also different. And design, to me, is entirely different. Design takes advantage of innovation. Design is a mindset, but it's actually just asking the right questions. And so the better the question, the better the design. It's not about the solution, to me. Design is to unsign. But you can only unsign if you can think about what it is that you want to unsign before you can sign it fresh. But I would like to hear from my colleagues what they think about culture, innovation, design 10 years from now in Hong Kong. Joyce, your child will be 9 years old, 10 years old by then?
I'm very optimistic. I think in Hong Kong we're afforded a lot of opportunities that I think in other cities you might not. First of all, there's China, which acts as an amazing backdrop of opportunities. And it's a great testing ground still, I think. We're still not set in our ways. As designers, we're willing to test things out, so are fabricators, and ideas can go a long way here. I think, if I were to have the same client meeting here versus in the US, ideas here generally, I think, there's still room, I think, for a bit of flexibility because people, in general, aren't set in their ways yet. So I think it's a great place to be, and I think 10 years from now, it'd be amazing to see what cultural innovations come of it.
William?
Yeah, I would agree. I think what's fascinating here is the speed at which things are accelerating in the design realm and the influence that fine art has on design. I think it's truly remarkable, and it's I think primarily in Asia where these two things are coming into realm together and affecting each other simultaneously. So we're working on a project here that is due in 2017, but it's a mixed-use building. It has hotel, it has an art mall, it has residence, it has offices, and it's an incredible complex to be weaving a fine arts facility into, but it's beyond fine arts. It's fine arts meets commercialism, meets hospitality, meets business. It's a remarkable thing, and it's kind of a grand experiment. I don't really see anything quite like it. And there's a lot of mixed-use development. It's a common way of developing large buildings now is to do mixed use, but not with such a prevalent fine art component. So it would be really interesting to see how that all goes down.
Well, I'd love to ask the last question of this session. I also practice design a lot. So I also teach design at university. We have come up with a situation of really globalized world. So we do design very similar strategies in very similar ways, and the outcomes probably also very similar. If you just cover up the name or maybe the project synopsis, everything, when you look at pictures of the interior, especially interior projects, you cannot tell, somehow you cannot tell the differences, whether this project or this design is done by which country's designers. So my question is, how do you think about the cultural identity thing? What will in your practice, the three speakers, in your practice, will you really want to inject more cultural identity issue in your domain, because you're dealing with different typologies of spaces? So will that become another strategy in your practice? Or maybe not strategy, maybe it's a kind of motion that you really want to tell the client you've got to do something different. In different locations, of course, but how do you deal with this cultural identity thing?
I'm going to chime in here. It's hard. I would say that, first of all, people all have 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, mostly. And there is some sort of universality to all of us, but at the same time, we each have a unique voice and a unique spirit. And I think that is a recognizable thing in design. And I think it's something that, at least in our office, that we strive for. It's a development of that unique voice. It's very difficult to express it in a magazine clipping. It's very difficult to express it in even a slide presentation like we've done just now. There is a degree of, let's say, there is a universal spirit, I believe, in the design world, like there is across many worlds, business, innovation. People are tapping into the same things on opposite sides of the world and discovering that they've found the same things by accident. And so there is an element of familiarity. Design has gone global. So what someone is doing in New York and in LA and in Paris and in Hong Kong and in Tokyo is being seen everywhere. And there is a culture of consumption and regurgitation that affects, I think, design like it affects any discipline. So I think there's an inevitability to having some degree of sameness on the page, so to speak. But what we are looking for, at least in our office, is a way to recede from having a sort of stamp and rather let the individual user generate their own experience. That for us is a goal. Certainly there is something we are after as well. It's not necessarily a nameable thing, and that I hope is reflected in a voice that expresses our work in a unique way. But in the end, it doesn't matter. The goal is to create an experience, a memorable experience, to make an impression. Yeah.
Thank you. Joyce?
I think for our practice, the feeling of fear is very important, and before we take on any project, we make sure that that feeling is strongly felt. What I mean by that is being approached by a client or a brief that we don't quite know what to do with yet, but we're excited to try. And I think it's that journey with the client, that relationship that we build, that distinguishes one project from the other. Earlier I was asked a question of how do you start a project, and to me it always feels like dating. You date a client and you understand their deepest secrets and darkest desires, and I think that relationship forms that special quality within that project, whether the concerns of sustainability or aesthetic or a use of a certain material. To us, the project becomes something out of this special relationship, and a different product is born out of it. So I think that there might be sameness, but I'm not sure whether it's intentional or whether it's just part of, us being humans and having similar principles and things that we want.
Shashi?
Well, Horace, I want to actually congratulate you and all of Hong Kong, because you did something extraordinary last week, which was acknowledge or have the Interior's Declaration be adopted or proclaimed here in Hong Kong. And the Interior's Declaration, for most people who may not know it, is a set of criteria that was pulled together out of research from 88 countries. The research was distilled first, and then it was discussed by 100 people in a room, and the outcome of which was this declaration. And then at IFI, the board has worked very hard to get that declaration be adopted by city mayors. So what's special, the reason I bring it up is that we had 100 people in that room have a discussion. 100 for a very specific, it was an international audience. 100 for a very specific reason, which is that scientists tell us, there's a scientific experiment that says something, and there are many variations on this, but the experiment that I know that has come from science says that if one monkey in one very specific forest finds a comb, doesn't know what to do with it, lifts it up and tries to sort of do whatever, puts it to its head at some point, and starts to comb, and because monkeys are copycats, that it takes 100 monkeys in one forest to comb their heads, and by osmosis around the world in every single forest, all monkeys comb their heads. And so there's something about ideas that automatically espouse a sameness that I know we struggle with as designers and creative beings, because we want to be so self-expressed and so unique and so different. And so we know that. We know that from our history. We know that from the essence of who we are as a humanity. And in our office, I think what we've decided after, and we are on the senior side here, becoming senile almost, but what we've decided after years of practice and living and breathing design is that we want to celebrate the sameness. And celebrating the sameness, we've realized that we don't actually know what that means. We don't know the distinctions that actually make us become better as a humanity. And so a lot of what we do then, we don't care that we look for the coolest, hippest new expression or a new technology or technique or the latest materiality, or we don't care about that. Because ultimately, whatever we do, because we are so much the same, it will begin to look the same. But what we are very deeply concerned about is that the individual clients we work with, that we have addressed their needs, their individual culture, and we've designed a lot for a lot of the Fortune 500 financial firms, for instance. Do you know, they're all the same. They all look that banks are banks are banks. Their customers are all of us, but they all kind of look the same. So what makes them different? And understanding the nuances is where it sits for us, and we're just always very appreciative and grateful when we get the opportunity to work with the client, understand the client, and they're really proud of what they get, and they don't change it in a hurry. And instead, we forged a relationship where we continue to work with them for years. And that's very gratifying to us.
Okay. I would love you all to say a sentence in order to close this dialogue. Can you give one sentence to Hong Kong?
Go Hong Kong.
But go a little bit slower.
I love you.
Okay. Thank you very much, distinguished speakers.